Okay, I've gone ahead and started the recording. All right, so one more second. All right, welcome everybody. On behalf of the Swampscott Conservancy, I'm Colleen Hitchcock. It's my pleasure to welcome you here this evening to join us for our Healing Kings Beach panel discussion. We are very grateful for our panelists, and I will introduce them in just a minute. But before we get going, I want to give a brief introduction to the Swampscott Conservancy. So if you're not familiar with the Conservancy, we are a small nonprofit located here in Swampscott, Massachusetts. We take a four-pronged approach to engaging our local community through education activities such as this. We also do in-person education activities as well as citizen science, habitat improvement, and community building. Our habitat improvement events include things like habitat restoration and native plantings. We do citizen science monitoring using iNaturalist, and also participating in oh my gosh, why can't I think of the coastal one? I can't think of it right now. And we've also partnered with Save the Harbor, Save the Bay in their coastal profiling of the beach as well. You can find us at the farmers market during the summer. Please join us for our annual plant sale as well. Our next meeting for the Conservancy, our meetings are open to one and all, so please join us to come share your ideas and events. Is March 16th at 6:30 p.m. It will be on Zoom, and you can learn more about some of our upcoming events and the activities that we engage in. So with that, I'm going to turn over again to the topic at hand. So you are all here to discuss and explore Kings Beach. The Conservancy is excited to have partnered with the Friends of Lynn and Nahant Beach, Save the Harbor, Save the Bay, and appreciate the support of Senator Crichton's office in getting this event planned and off the ground. And so this evening we will hear from our four panelists who will bring together different topics or aspects of exploring Kings Beach. We'll first hear from Senator Brendan Crighton. He will then be followed by Michael Celona, who is the Vice President of the Friends of Lynn and Nahant Beach, who will be followed by Chris Mancini. Actually, did we just decide we're changing that? He'll be followed by Jim Olivetti, who's the Vice President of the Swampscott Conservancy, and then Chris Mancini will close out the panel this evening. At that point, we will open it up for Q&A. You will then be invited to unmute yourself and use the hand raising option. I'll remind us at that point. You can also drop questions into the chat both during presentations and at the end, and I'm happy to read those aloud for when we do finish. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen sharing and hopefully hand it back over, or hand it now over to Senator Creighton. Hang on, I've lost control of my screen. There we go. Senator Creighton.
Thank you, Colleen, and thank you to the Swampscott Conservancy for having me here today. Very honored to be part of this panel, and I have the least expertise on the panel, which is nice to be the lead off and then pass it over to some really strong advocates on this issue. So thank you to Jim, Mike Celona from the Friends, and Chris Mancini from Save the Harbor. So I kind of want to just break down, give a general breakdown of our efforts in the legislature, even predating my time in office. And then I really look forward to the question and answer period of this, which, for me is always the most, helpful part, I think, from our end and hopefully from yours as well. Just by background, I am your state senator, assuming that you live in Lynn, Swampscott, Marblehead, Nahant, Saugus, Swampscott, Saugus, and Linfield. I have been serving in this role for a few years, but prior to that, I had worked on this issue under Senator Tom McGee, who was most recently mayor in Lynn, but I worked with him for 10 years. And during that time, Tom began to serve on the Metropolitan Beaches Commission, which worked very closely with Save the Harbor, Save the Bay. And, it was shocking to me as a Lynn native, someone that, we summer on Long Beach here in Lynn and spent a ton of time on the beach, to hear that one of our beaches in Kings Beach was one of the most polluted in the Commonwealth. And I remember getting in an argument with a fellow legislative aide of mine at the time who read an article, and I said, there's no way that's true. Like, it's baloney. People just rag on Lynn all the time. It's nothing to do with that. And lo and behold, he was right. And Tom, very quickly made it a priority of his, and after a number of years of advocacy, was able to get significant funding included in an environmental bond bill, which was great news. It took a lot of work to get there. That said, for bond bills for folks, and I apologize, some of you have heard this spiel a million times. Some probably this maybe the first time, so forgive me if I'm repeating too much. But a bond bill is basically the legislature authorizing the governor or the administration to spend money. So we're saying, Governor Baker, you were able to spend, $20 million to fix water quality on Kings Beach. Have at it. To be fair to the governor, they have a ceiling on how much debt the state can accumulate. So he has to prioritize out of billions of dollars of authorized money what projects he's actually going to pursue. So for a long time, up until really recently, that was kind of our path forward. Was we have this money authorized, we had it reauthorized through subsequent bond bills. Worked very closely with Rep. Ehrlich, Rep. Capano, Rep. Cahill. The delegation, we're united on almost all things. I'm very lucky to have such a supportive delegation. But on this one in particular, we've all interacted in different ways. Laurie, represents the Swampscott, Swampscott inland, Lynn end of the beach, or she did prior to leaving. Rep. Capano and I served on the city council together and has a tremendous amount of experience dealing with Lynn water and sewer issues, and is an advocate just in general for our coast in beach line, representing the Long Beach portion. And Rep. Cahill, while he doesn't touch the beach, we all in Lynn use the beach, and I can see Jane on there, so I got to give Dan a shout out. He grew up right on the beach there at King. So I think the four of us certainly worked really well together, and Pete and Dan and I continue to do so. So we're pursuing this bond money, right? We're trying to get the governor to get it out, and then COVID hit, and a strange thing happened where the federal government decided to send the state just an unprecedented historical amount of funding. So the stars kind of aligned in the sense that working with friends groups, community groups, individual citizens, Save the Harbor, certainly, Friends of Lynn and Nahant Beach, everyone seemed to be rallying almost organically around the water quality issue at Kings Beach and really raising their voices. And I think some of it probably had to do with COVID. Some of it probably had to do with, some discharges that happened, some, more severe, more frequent severe weather events, people just getting involved. And, the civic activism really drove this. So, politicians, we love to take credit. We love to do the press releases. That said, there was a movement that I think started with a lot of folks that are here on this call today. So we had kind of that groundswell of support. And at the same time, we have our federal partners saying we're sending Massachusetts, this record funding. So we quickly, as a delegation, partnered with the city and the town to say, we need to find a way to get some of this money. And we advocated through, numerous hearings on the ARPA funds. Speaking, we want money generally for the state for water and sewer infrastructure repair. But to the same end, we wanted to make sure we got money specifically for King so that we could get the ball rolling. And knowing that we're not going to get enough funding for this, it's a pretty high cost item, both on the Swampscott and Lynn side, but that we needed to get people's attention. And I think we were able to successfully do so to the tune of $5.3 million. And I know it's, we're talking billions in the ARPA funding, so it seems like a small amount, but it was one of the largest earmarks with the Globe and other publications as like, this is an example of big funding that came from this bill. So it's a start in the right direction. And, at this point, we have a federal delegation, a local delegation. I think Councilor Coco Allen Suggs on as well, the city council on Lynn, the mayor, I see Councilor LaPierre. You have, and forgive me, it's hard to scroll while I'm speaking, but you have local government, you have state government, you have the federal government, all of our eyes being on this. You have community groups raising the issue on a regular basis. I've presented at more of these meetings than I can remember. It's a topic that's on everyone's mind. I was just down the hockey rink for my son's hockey tryouts. A parent grabbed me there. We're talking about it. So it's got momentum, but there's still a lot of unanswered questions, both on the land side. So how we improve and repair the aged, in many cases, aged infrastructure, but also just potential, tie-ins, and I'm sure you'll hear about that later. The infrastructure piece on the land side, and then also keeping an open mind about potential fixes on the water side for treatment and remediation, which present many, environmental challenges. And I don't want to get hopes up on either end, but just to say that we are full steam ahead in doing everything we can. The Secretary of Environmental Affairs, Secretary Theodoridis, has met with us a number of times on this issue. There seems to be a buy-in now for water and sewer infrastructure and water quality from the administration that we had not seen previously. So while this administration is leaving, we want to work with them to make sure that we're getting the resources on the ground. We're doing everything we can, and also making sure that anybody that's running for elected office, that this is an issue that they are committed to, and that we're holding all of our leaders, and myself included, accountable to getting this done. So I'm pumped to see all of you here tonight. Look forward to question and answers. And at this point, I will hand it over to the experts that will be far more interesting and informative than I could be.
Excellent. Thank you, Senator. At this point, I'll hand it over to Michael Celona from the Friends of Lynn and Nahant Beach. And Michael, you're welcome to screen share.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for coming. I wanted to spend just a few minutes going through a handful of slides just to kind of set the table for some of the history of Kings Beach and some of the issues there, just to kind of help us all kind of appreciate what's going on. But I wanted to highlight first that the one thing that's bringing us all together is that we love our beaches. We love Kings Beach. It offers a lot. And, working together, Save the Harbor, Save the Bay. This was me and my daughter at a splash a couple of years ago, fundraising. Together we can get a lot of things done. And so thank you for being here tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got here. What are some of the historical issues that brought us here? Chris is going to talk about some of the water quality issues and kind of some of the things that we can do moving forward. And Jim is also going to touch a bit on the water quality piece. I thought it was important to say that keep in mind that as I was trying to put together these slides, that this is a complicated issue that spans 2 communities, 4 state agencies, 2 federal agencies, 1 regional commission, 2 plus town departments, 2 court orders, several court cases, and so on. And it has been going on before any of us were born. So just to have some perspective, we're going to touch upon some issues, but we're not going to, obviously can't cover everything in the next hour or so. And, if there are additional questions that we don't get to or some, specific concerns, we can address them offline. But again, we're all just going to try to get through this together. So I'll start this off by describing this as, in the beginning, as a tale of 2 pipes. And so this is on Kings Beach. If you're looking at the road, you're, very familiar with these 2 large pipes. And I'm going to kind of describe my piece as the tale of 2 pipes, then I'm going to end it with the tale of 2 beaches, because it's important to have some of this context for what similarities there are, but also what differences there are for then how we're going to approach them. So then similarities include that they both discharge contaminated water almost all the time onto Kings Beach. There are some times when the water is cleaner than others, but for the most part, it's what we would consider to be dirty water. It's contaminated with typically at least some levels of storage, groundwater and stormwater runoff. So after it rains, this is part of where the road runoff goes to. Both are under federal court orders to be fixed. So both pipes and what comes out of them are backed by federal court orders. They're both long-standing issues that originated over decades, or certainly in the Lynn piece centuries ago. And in both cases, the fixes are expensive as well as time-consuming. But there are also some differences. They're controlled, obviously, by different communities and actually under different court orders. In this slide, the pipe on the left is the pipe that's discharging from Lynn. The pipe on the right, which actually doesn't look like a pipe, looks like a massive thing, is discharging from Swampscott. Fixes for addressing the water quality issues are related, but they're different, so they're not the same. And one other noteworthy difference is that in after high volume rain event, the Lynn pipe will occasionally release high volume storage. So there's a piece that I will describe in a minute about how sometimes more storage can come out of there than is typically coming out. So I thought it would be good to describe. So if you're looking at the pipe on the beach, you have to have some context of, okay, so what is actually, where's that water coming from? And so it's good to have some context that the water is coming from somewhat of a far distance, depends how you appreciate distance when you're in Lynn, but from, it's coming originally from the Glenmere Pond, or a lot of us would call it the Floating Bridge Pond. It's 107, cuts over. And that's where the water actually is originating from. It also, again, because it is fed by stormwater, it also drains about 600 acres of land in Lynn. So there's a fair amount of developed, obviously, residential commercial land that's being drained when it rains and pours into the pipe and discharges onto the beach. It also includes parts of Stacy's Brook, and this will be discussed several times. Stacy's Brook doesn't really exist anymore. It used to be an above ground wetland, but was filled over time and also channelized. So it was put into pipes underground, and I'll mention why in a second. So it's important to know on the Lynn side, that pipe is draining pond water from Glenmere Pond, groundwater as it enters the pipes just from the pressure in the ground, stormwater, but importantly also storage, because there's not only stormwater pipes that are connected to this drainage area, but there's also seemingly some sewer pipes as well. And this is a very approximate image map. But don't go to town on this one. Now, on the right-hand side, or the right side of when you were looking at the beach, or excuse me, at the wall, the Swampscott pipe is also draining. It's draining part of Swampscott. And so in this case, it's kind of hard to see, but the blue lines are what's feeding into the pipe that discharges onto the beach from Swampscott. So likewise from Lynn, it's draining lots of water, especially when it rains, because that's the idea behind when these were installed, was to move water out of the cities and the towns. It's intended to drain rain from the roads, but there's also some pieces of Stacy's Brook that are actually in there. And again, you can get into the weeds in this, but just to know that there's a constant flow coming out of that pipe as well. That's partly Stacy's Brook, some groundwater, but also storage. And in the case of Swampscott, I'll describe in a second kind of the difference between the storage issue in both. So there's a lot of text here, but I'm trying to summarize 100 or 125 years of issues in Lynn in this area in about 5 bullet points. So a report from the early part of the 19th century describes Stacy's Brook, so this is the area that's discharging, as an open sewer of slow current, frequently obstructed by loose stones, dead cats, hens, and other animals. Back in the day, the idea was to move sewerage and filthy water dump it first into a wetland and then try to get it out. And so this is how Stacy's Brook in that area handled sewer water and runoff, and everything was to stick it into a pipe and make it go away. As part of this, and because it became so polluted as Stacy's Brook existed above ground and was a wetland, it eventually was buried and filled. As I mentioned before, was replaced with pipes, and then sewer pipes, so household sewer pipes or commercial sewer pipes and storm drains were connected to it. This is a good way of trying to get rid of wastewater and rainwater. And then the pipe emptied onto the beach. So, okay, so that's incredibly dirty water, discharging onto the beach, causing lots of issues. Eventually, that was, determined to be not a really good idea. And in the late 90s and early 2000s, Lynn spent a tremendous amount of money to undo this by what they call separating the sewer connections from the pipe, stormwater and sewer separation, so that the sewer water goes to the Lynn sewer plant and the rainwater and the rest goes to the beach. And this was a big improvement. If you talk to people who've been in Lynn for years, they'll tell you horror stories about the water in the solids and just unmentionables coming out onto the beach on a regular basis. However, it appears that some sewer connections were missed when these were broken and taken out of the pipe that leads to the beach. And they continue to release some amount of dirty water into the pipe and then onto the beach. And in addition, a CSO valve, which is a combined sewer overflow valve, was installed in the pipe that during the heavy rainstorms releases raw sewage basically directly onto the beach. That was installed because of other issues with the sewer plants or the sewer system. And it's basically a safety valve so to prevent the sewer plant from being overrun and from houses from being flooded. So it's an unfortunate piece. The court-ordered fix for the Lynn side envisions in the future, so in the early to mid 2030s, so about a decade from now, very infrequent CSO events and cleaner water in general. But that's on the Lynn side. Oops, sorry. Okay. Progress has also occurred over time on the Swampscott side. So Stacy's Brook existed in Swampscott as well. It branched out into both communities. And like in Lynn, it was buried, filled, and put into a pipe. And again, same type of issue. The pipe was supposed to bring everything to the ocean. However, in Swampscott, the sewer pipes in the streets were laid on top of or near the stormwater pipes. And over time, those sewer pipes have broken or they have collapsed, and they're leading or leaching or flowing into the stormwater pipes. And so the discharge from the Swampscott side contains that sewerage from broken sewer pipes. So again, a different issue than the issue in Lynn. The Swampscott court order to fix this is much newer. It was issued in 2015. The one in Lynn has been going on for decades. So efforts to fix the Swampscott side are more recent. They're working on a plan. There's been public meetings and there's some presentations you can find online about the work that's been going. And there's a bunch more work to be done in the future. So this will be my final slide. So the tale of two pipes, and there's also the issue of the tale of two beaches. So again, in a similar way, the beaches.
Michael, yeah, we're all
I apologize for interrupting. I don't think your slides have advanced. I tried to private chat you. You're still on the Lynn slide for public viewing. Uh-oh. Now we've lost your audio.
No,
too.
I know. I've
okay.
closed it down to try to bring it back.
Gotcha.
So did you get stuck on my Lynn slide?
Yes, we were stuck with the
Oh, that horrible sign. Okay, let's move away from that. There we go. Okay, thank you. So again, similar to the tale of two pipes, it's a tale of two beaches. So they have some similarities. They're both under state health department regulations for the minimum amount of water quality monitoring and the minimum amount of communication that needs to be done for those results. And you can see on, I didn't highlight it, but you can see almost in the middle of the beach, the flow coming from the outfalls. And the Swampscott is on the kind of the north side on this slide, and then the Lynn side is on the southern side. They're both have similar water quality outside of the pipe. Outside of the pipe discharging, the water quality is pretty much the same. You're talking about a fairly large bay, flushes really well. And so aside from that, it's the same water that's floating around. The differences are many. It includes the management of the beaches. In Lynn, it's the State Parks Department, DCR. In Swampscott, it's the DPW and the Board of Health. The testing regimen is different. In Lynn, it's done on a weekly basis from Memorial Day through June. And then beginning then, it's done on a daily basis through Labor Day. On the Swampscott side, it's done weekly, usually starting in mid-June through Labor Day. Testing locations, Lynn has 4 testing locations, Swampscott has 1. And again, the distinction being that at certain times, the Lynn side releases a lot of sewerage onto the beach. So in terms of trying to get into some of the water quality issues or aspects, we're going to go with Jim and then with Chris. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. Jim, I'm going to go ahead and share your slides for you, and you just let me know when you would like to advance.
Great, thank you. So Michael, thanks for making a complicated scenario very understandable. I think I've learned a lot on the differences and similarities. That was great. What I'm going to talk about is some information that I received from the public health director, Jeff Vaughn, for the town of Swampscott. Unfortunately, nobody from Swampscott was available to join us, but I did get a presentation from Jeff, and I have 4 slides that I thought were relevant to our discussion and would add things. They're Swampscott centric information. I also received today a PowerPoint on some of the technical things that are going on in Swampscott to address what Michael was talking about of the sewer pipes collapsing or leaking into the storm water. And I put that PowerPoint on the Swampscott Conservancy website. So if people are interested in some of the technical details, unfortunately, the PowerPoint is a little old. Swampscott has advanced beyond the PowerPoint now, but you can find that PowerPoint at swampscottconservancy.org/resources. And if you go there, you'll find that PowerPoint presentation. This whole topic is very relevant to me personally, in that a lot of the work to repair those sewer pipes is going on in front of my house on Farragut Road. And it has been going on for weeks and weeks and weeks now. And so I know that they're working diligently to ameliorate things, but I think they still have a long way to go. So Colleen, if you could advance the first slide. This just shows you a sampling, the sampling area that Jeff Vaughn does on Kings Beach. And I assumed that he sampled at the outfall, but he actually told me that he samples for the Swampscott area of Kings Beach, halfway between Mission on the Bay and the Lynn line. And he goes out into 3 feet of water so that he's where he says where people will be swimming. He did say that a few years ago, the Department of Public Works was in charge of sampling, and they sampled much closer to the Tale of Two Pipes area that Michael was talking about, but that's no longer the case. If you could advance it, Colleen. So this slide shows the water quality, the weekly water quality tests last summer, that the Swampscott Board of Health did. And you can see, if you look at this slide, that there are 4 areas where the tests revealed a CFU of over 104. Units. That's colony forming units. So these are the E. coli bacteria, and 104 is the benchmark. And they happened, it looked like, pretty well throughout the summer. There was one in June. There was one in July and one in August. 2 in July and 1 in August. And when they do get a reading over 104, they are required to sample the next day. And so if you look at the data there, you can see that on June 23rd, there was a huge, there must have been a lot of, it was a storm event because there's a yes there. And you can see that the next day, the reading dropped precipitously. And that actually is the case in all 4 of the exceedances, where there's a stormwater, heavy stormwater. There's some mixing with some of the leaking that Michael was talking about, and then the stormwater drains into the bay and the bacteria, the E. coli level drops into the safe range. And Jeff said personally that he notices that these readings and the number of high readings varies from year to year depending on how many heavy summer rainfalls there are. So that linkage between stormwater and poor water quality is definitely, at least anecdotally, and what you can see in this screen is holding. So if you could go to the next slide, Colleen. This gives you, oh no, this was the one that you had replaced, Colleen. There it is. Okay, great. So this is a kind of a picture of what's going on between mid-June and Labor Day. There are 12 weeks of free testing once per week that's funded by a grant. But then if the Swampscott Board of Health has to test again, then the town has to pay for it. That's an interesting little tidbit there for you. Not everybody knows that. The samples are collected on Wednesdays of that week. So once again, a big difference from what's happening on the Lynn side. It raises a question in my mind. If you are testing on Wednesday and there's a big storm on Thursday or Friday or Saturday, those tests are not going to really catch it because it won't be tested again until the following Wednesday. So, when I first moved to Swampscott almost 11 years ago now, a neighbor warned me not to swim the day after a big storm, no matter what day of the week it was. And I've followed that advice over these years. And it's just, I think, something that a lot of people in Swampscott do, which is unfortunate, but, we're working on it. And then the final slide, Colleen. So Jeff did share some news with me that in the summer of this coming summer, he's going to be flagging as well as putting up a sign. Swampscott actually tests 6 beaches, not just Kings Beach. And I guess, although I didn't get any data from Jeff, the other beaches may potentially have poor water quality events as well. But these flags will be put up, these red flags. I asked him a little bit about the signs, and he said that the wording on the signs is dictated by the state, but that the town is responsible for making the signs. And the wording is only in English. There are no other languages included in the signs that Swampscott uses. So that might be something that they might think about in the future. He did admit that the coordination between what's tested on the Lynn side and the Swampscott side really doesn't exist. That if Lynn discovers a poor water quality situation, Swampscott does not post a warning sign, which is just what's happening right now. And I think that ends my my observations. And I want to thank Jeff Vaughn for sharing that information with the Swampscott Conservancy.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. Chris, it looks like you're ready to already take the reins.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Mancini. I'm the executive director of Save the Harbor, Save the Bay. I moved to Swampscott a year and a half ago. My wife and daughter and I started looking to move up to the North Shore. We looked in Lynn and Salem and in Swampscott, and ended up here in Swampscott. And this is not a joke, but one of the considerations and where we wanted to move was I wanted to help clean up Kings Beach. I started working at Save the Harbor in 2017. My predecessor, Patty Foley, was born and raised in South Boston, and Save the Harbor was key in cleaning up South Boston's beaches as well as most of the other metropolitan region beaches. And starting day one, I looked at the data that I'm going to share with you, and I said, it's not fair that Kings Beach is the one that got left behind, and let's figure this out. So I'm really glad to be here. It's great, after a year and a half, I recognize a lot of names and faces in the meeting today. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to fly through a bunch of slides really fast. Don't worry about missing any info. I'm going to start with just a quick background on Save the Harbor, for those of you who don't know. But you won't have time to read everything. But I want to keep this moving as we go and get to some Q&A. So. Yeah, Save the Harbor was founded in 1986, and our mission is to protect, restore, and share these amazing, spectacular urban natural resources we have. We've done over 35 years, and if you go to our website, you can, in our social media, you'll see all the stuff that we love to brag about, including successful completion of the harbor cleanup, and most pertinent to our conversation here, virtually eliminating CSOs, combined sewer overflows, and stormwater discharges into North Dorchester Bay. And the South Boston beaches, Carson Beach, M Street Beach, are now some of the cleanest urban beaches in the country. And they dealt with similar issues as to what Kings Beach is dealing with now. Yes, they did have the advantage of being part of the MWRA region and using Deer Island Sewage Treatment Plant. There's a lot of assets that come with being part of that region that, Lynn is just outside. Lynn has its own water treatment, sewage treatment. But again, we've dealt with this on many beaches, and, it's time to do it up here. Just a couple of things about Save the Harbor. Senator Crighton co-chairs the Metropolitan Beaches Commission. And which has a pretty wide purview. We've most recently held 3 public hearings on racial equity, access for people with disabilities, and language accessibility. So to Jim, your point, we surveyed 250 signs on 13 public beaches, and our boundary actually ends at the Swampscott Lynn line. So we work on the state beaches from Kings and Nahant all the way down to Nantasket, and similar situation, found only 4 signs that were not in English. But we did get the commissioner of the DCR was at all those hearings, and made a commitment, let us all know that they are looking into and making a commitment to doing better with their signage, especially and taking action this year. And just a couple other things, we do the Better Beaches program. We provide funds that we raise and that the state provides for free beach events and programs on the region's public beaches. I know some of our grantees are in the Zoom room today. This is something to check out if you have an idea for a great free public event in Red Rock Park and Nahant on Kings Beach. Come to us. Let's talk about it. And then our big flagship program is our youth program. And I only bring this up here because starting again this year, we're resuming our 3 free trips a week to the Boston Harbor Islands. You do have to get down to Boston, but all of you are invited to join us on our harbor cruises. You can go to the website. You can reach out to me if you want to come out to Spectacle or George's Island with this summer. We're doing it. We're going to be doing 24 trips, and we're trying to get a couple on the weekends as well. Most recently, we just had our annual Shamrock Splash. Michael, had a picture from a couple of years ago. We were back on the beach this year. A lot of people want to know, what can I do? Well, one thing you can do is we're still raising money for it. All this money goes into the grant program. So it goes back out to Friends of Lynn and Nahant Beach, to art projects and other Diversity Matters Fest in Red Rock Park. You can I put my personal fundraising website up there because I would like credit for all the money you all donate tonight, but you have to find Michael's page if you want to donate to him. Sorry, Michael, every man for himself when it comes to, but it all goes to the same place. So yeah, Michael did a great job, and Senator Crichton, kind of reviewing the recent and longer term history. This is all press from last year. We really made it an effort to elevate this issue, talk about Kings Beach a lot, and got a lot of great press. The Daily Item covered it a lot. Kings Beach really was the focus of the water quality report card that we do every year. Great coverage on the 5 million that Senator Crighton helped secure in the legislature. And I think I like this one because it really drives home everyone's point tonight. Collaboration is the key, and we're going to hit that point over and over again because it is a complicated situation. You have two municipalities, one beach, right? And there's that coordination that needs to happen when it comes to the cleanup, when it comes to the communication and the signage and everything. Because from all of our perspective, we want to go out there and use a beach. It just looks like one beach to most of us, right? It's almost doesn't matter to us, where the railing changes color. Uh, so so into the meat of it a little bit, and Jim had the great data on the Swampscott side. I'm going to focus a little more on the Deep Department of Public Health and their testing on the state beaches. This is our report card from last year, which covers up through 2020. And again, the basis for the press that we really tried to highlight. As you can see, Kings Beach was the lowest rated beach in 2020. And it always flip-flopped with Tinian Beach in Dorchester, but it was fairly consistent as the lowest rated beach. And Tinian's a whole different situation. It doesn't really even qualify as a swimming beach at this point. It's the mouth of the Neponset River. So Kings Beach is the swimming beach in the metropolitan region that needs the most TLC. And so we are, want to focus on that. You see our three priorities for this year. The rest of the presentation I'm going to do actually comes from a presentation of our Beaches Science Advisory Committee. A lot of this info is from 2017, but the story remains the same. The data has changed very slightly, but some of this I'm going to go through quickly again because I think Michael and Jim and Senator Crichton covered a lot of this already. Michael pointed out this stuff already. There's a bunch of photos of the pipes because I think it's an interesting view that a lot of people don't get. The short version is don't go in the outfall. Don't go in there. It looks like a fun creek to jump over and play in. It's not. It's very dirty. It's discharged from Swampscott on Lynn on a regular basis. And the other reason we are focused on Kings Beach is when I showed you that list. So I'm just gonna go back really quick. These are all the beaches from Nahant to Nantasket. And again, they've all dealt with this issue at one point or another. But the big problem on Kings is not just that it's dirty, but that it is sometimes clean. Like it could be a resource, but it's the only beach where we have to think about it. And that's not fair. And it becomes an environmental justice issue because it's Lynn's beach, right? And I don't lump Swampscott into this because I think in Swampscott, we have a number of other beaches, right, that we can go to. If you're a resident, you have a parking pass, you can go down to Preston, or you can go down to Phillips Beach, great beaches. We've got options. Kings Beach is so accessible by foot, even to so much of Lynn, and yet you can't just wander down there, carefree. And again, that's where it becomes, I think, an environmental justice issue. One of our most diverse municipalities on the coast, and you don't have that kind of freedom to use your public space. So again, just a few photos, from the side. You can see the town line here, the Lynn side and the Swampscott side. Just to drive home Michael's point, it all comes from all over both municipalities to the same spot. I like this because most people don't wander up the pipe, but here's a nice little view of what it would look like. So my daughter is 8. She's like, I want to go explore in there, and I'm like, yeah, that would be fun. Don't do it. So my big picture dream is to. I actually don't have a great photo of it, but sorry, is all those old pilings there, in terms of a communication strategy, anchoring or attaching a buoy there. So you have signage right on the beach, right? When you have low tide and you're wandering down there, you can't see the signs up on the boardwalk, but that's where you really, really need it. So again, not to repeat too much, but there are community efforts to investigate these sources. There are consent decrees by the EPA. Lynn Water and Sewer is going into a process to identify it's IDDE, right? Illicit discharge and detection, illicit illicit discharge and detection elimination. I might be saying it backwards. I keep but to find those sources, those illicit connections that might be left over from when the sewer was separated, which made a huge improvement there. And of course, the town of Swampscott we've seen this map before, but this one I like because it shows phase one of Swampscott's work on this, and where, as Jim said, right outside his door, we've seen the trucks out there working on the pipes, to do the rehabilitation, to reline them, to prevent some of that dry weather problem, right? So, we know there's a wet weather issue, and from the storm surges, but we want to also get rid of that dry weather issue, is that kind of ongoing situation. I'm going to skip through these, just more looks at the map. You've got Kings Beach there on the left, and you can see how the pipe at its end here flows from the town and city into the beach. Now, this is a good partner slide to Jim's slide from the testing in Swampscott. This is where Department of Public Health and DCR sample weekly on the Lynn side, right? So you don't have to memorize this, but you see Eastern Ave, Pierce Road, and Kimball Road move progressively farther away from the Stacy Brook outfall. Eastern Ave being right at the mouth of the outfall. And then I'm going to show you the data from like 2012 through 2016. This is the percent of times that they failed the tests, right? So again, on the right, we're closest to the outfall, and on the left, we're farthest from the outfall. So you can see, obviously, the pattern in general. This doesn't apply in every situation, but in general, the closer you are to the outfall, the more you're going to fail the test. I'm going to show you the same slide now with the Stacy Brook data in it, and I show you this one first, so you can see the contrast. Here's the sampling with Stacy Brook put in there. So if there's a question of where's a lot of this contamination coming from, I think the data really backs up that Stacy Brook is the primary contaminant of this beach, and anything that's going in from stormwater to those broken pipes and those illicit connections is what we're dealing with, and really the priority for me, as I see it, to really take the time, find the resources, and it's going to take time, but to put that effort in, which I think everyone here is basically on the same page about. And then again, just a quick slide. There is a wet weather, dry weather difference. The wet weather, as you can see, does make the spike. But again, you look at the Stacy Brook data at the very bottom here, and you see there is not a huge difference between the wet and the dry weather, that there is this ongoing challenge, even when there's not a big storm surge, that there is something happening there on a regular basis. There's other issues on the beach. No one's brought it up yet, but often people ask about the algae. Is unrelated to the sewage. For those of you wondering, it is this strange paella algae that grows here in Lynn Harbor and somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and it smells very bad and decomposes quickly. And there is a state line item to remove that on a regular basis during the swimming season, because it does really affect our quality of life on the waterfront here. And then signage and communication and translation are the other big thing. How do we maintain this communication with folks? So, the question is, what can be done? I'll leave this slide up as we go. We have 2 slides on this. The communication is the big one in the short term. Letting, that's what you're all doing here, understanding, hey, this is where the problem is. If it's rained, regardless of what the test says, probably don't use that beach just to be safe. But again, there are days when it is okay to use. And so we want to be able to communicate that as clearly as possible. Yeah, so again, there's lots of resources that are not easily accessible necessarily. And then, of course, looking at the infrastructure fixes, which the senator spoke about. We want to see everyone get involved. I know people really get a lot of enthusiasm and motivation out of stuff like this. Keep this on the front burner. Everyone here, the electeds and the councilors and the state reps and senators who are here are all well aware of this and on top of this. But as citizens, as residents, keep bringing it up. Ask questions. And again, it's really about working together. And not, it's two towns, it's a city and a town, both work that need to work together to solve a common issue. And it's an issue that I think in general we're all in agreement on. We'd love a cleaner beach. A couple little teases that are a little more specific. Save the date. We're looking at doing a small fundraiser and info session with the Save Kings Beach group in May. So that's something that we'd invite you all to come to. We're looking at the idea of volunteering if you want to put some time in at these summer standouts to get down there at Stacy's Brook with a couple signs, just to do general public education as people go by, people who can't make it or to a Zoom like this and aren't combing the internet for the DPH testing and the Lynn public TV rebroadcasts of the commission meetings. And again, I'm going to do another hit up for it. Donate at the Shamrock Splash. All that money goes right back into free programs. And if everyone donates $10 right now, it's another $770 for free programs. And later this spring, we'll be doing a summit of the Metropolitan Beaches Commission, and happy to keep in communication with the Swampscott Conservancy about that. We'll be presenting the first draft of the results we've heard from our hearings on maintenance, infrastructure, and inclusion and accessibility. So here's some more information. I'll paste all of this in. You can go to our water quality report card at our website. You can read the report on why Kings Beach is closed to get all the details you want about CFUs and parts per million and bacterial counts. It's really exciting reading. Friends of Lynn and Nahant Beach. You can go to Lynn Public TV. They rebroadcast all of the Lynn Water and Sewer Commission meetings. Some of them are very short, which is really nice. And the Swampscott Select Board has their updates. March 2021 has a great update on the phase 1 progress of the sewer repair there. And then this last link is the DPH website, which does the daily testing in the summer. And so you can go to that website. You can find it through Friends of Lynn and Nahant Beach. You can find it through Save the Harbor, and you can go directly to it and get the actual data on the day of. The only thing to be aware of is actually the data from the previous day, because it takes 24 hours for that test to come back. So you do want to get used to that idea of, well, if there's a certain amount of rain out the window, it's probably going to be dirty. But I just want to close by, echoing Michael's opening. We love our beaches, and this is a great beach. And here's 2 contest winners from Friends of Lynn and Nahant Beach's monthly photo contest. I happened to take one of them. I was very excited. The one on the left, as my daughter dragged me out at sunrise to search for unicorns. But I was really glad that we did it. So, yeah, I will leave it there. I see some hands up. I think I hit all my points, and thank you for having us.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Chris, for rounding out the panel this evening. First, I'd like to just offer a gracious virtual round of applause for all of our panelists today. So you can join me in that from home if you would like. That was my little snappy snap to say thank you to everybody for joining us this evening. We do have a number of questions already in the chat, and I do see one hand raised. So I'm going to start first with the chat, since there's been a question in there for a few minutes, and this one came from Douglas Thompson. And he asks, why has quality become worse over the past few years? And so if there's a panelist who wants to address that topic or issue.
I will jump right back in, and it's not, oh, what did I do? I went to my website. Whoops.
And as you were talking, Chris, I did drop some links as you were talking for some of the relevant sites that you were looking at as well.
Okay, cool. So if you look at it, it bounces around, right? It's this is really based on the weather, right? So you see back in 2017, it was actually a really dry year, and Kings Beach was at 92%. But it also depends on if you looked at the Swampscott sampling that Jim showed, some days after a storm it dropped dramatically, and sometimes it dropped less dramatically. It depends on the tides. It depends on the rainfall. If you sample right after a tide has come in and out, the dilution happens fairly quickly in the ocean. It's a big volume of water. So that's why we tend to look at this 6-year average in our water quality report card, because it's collecting this as opposed to a snapshot in time. It's showing this general trend, which is how we get to this point that, like, you see these South Boston beaches, Pleasure Bay, M Street, City Point, Carson, are all really highly rated year after year. And when you have a low rating on one of those, again, that's the outlier. And you go, well, what was that? Was that actually a problem, or was there a piece of bird poop in the sample they took? So it's you can kind of explain or some of that stuff.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. If no other panelist wants to add to that, I'm going to invite Steve Eckman to unmute and ask his question, and then I'll return back to the chat.
Okay, thanks very much. Can you hear me okay? Okay,
Yep,
great.
you're good to go.
Thank you. I just figure out the camera here. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks to everybody for presenting. That was really, really interesting. And I'm so grateful to a couple of people who just let us know about this meeting. I only found out about it on Facebook like yesterday, I think. So I know that there's so much that's been going on. So, but just thank you, everybody. I've been a voter here for 25 years. Member of the Swampscott Club and groups of friends of Swampscott Sailing.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Steve. You started out loud and clear, but you're cutting out a bit.
Okay. Just these Bluetooth things. Is that better?
That's so much better.
All right. Great. Thank you so much. You never know. You can just be talking into space there. So as a boater for 25 years, a member of the Swampscott Yacht Club, and a founder of the Friends of Swampscott Sailing, clearly, I've been very concerned about the water quality for our kids, for ourselves, and not just for humans. This is an issue beyond just people. But I know that as politicians, you worry about the people impact, and I definitely get that. What I've been curious about is, as a science guy and a former science teacher, the data you show kind of leads you to think that it's all point or non-point sources, from land, and I'm sure it probably is. I'm not really an environmental scientist, although I worked in environmental consulting for a couple of years back in Philadelphia. So I am asking a real question of any science person here, not that politicians and volunteers aren't important, but I'd love to hear a scientist answer this question. What about sources from the ocean? What about sources from out there in Boston Harbor or further out? I've heard from a scientist something that was very troubling about current changes out there that's actually causing material that was pumped out into the harbor to come back into our little Nahant Bay. And that was really troubling to me, because it's nothing that I've heard anybody really speak to. Could anyone comment on that?
I'd be curious, Steve, what the material being pumped out into the harbor is that
It's
they were referring to.
fecal matter.
From where?
From Deer Island, 7 miles out.
Right. So, I mean, I would definitely want to look into that more. We save I sit on the Public Interest Advisory Committee that is part of the Outfall Monitoring Science Advisory Panel. And I mean, the Deer Island sewage treatment plant is the reason that Boston Harbor has become one of the greatest environmental success stories. And
we're all very proud. We're all very proud.
So it's it's monitored really closely, and it's 9 miles out into Massachusetts Bay. And
We're
the
well
water
aware.
that
Could you
okay, so
answer the question? Could you answer the question? And I'd love a scientist to answer the question, if you would.
okay,
Anybody in the audience? Anybody in the audience is a scientist,
Yes,
environmental scientist,
yes,
professional?
I am an environmental scientist, and I know Chris has some background in this too, and I think he would agree that that really has nothing to do with the issue here.
yeah, that's
And
the short
what's
answer.
your basis? What's the data source for that? I'm a science guy too, professionally. But could you tell me where you get that idea and why this person is clearly wrong that I heard from?
I'd love to see the
Steve,
source, but it's the water that comes the Diron does cleans the water, and it's actually cleaner when it comes out of there. They're not pumping dirty
Okay,
sewage
all
out
right,
into
that's
Massachusetts Bay.
fine. That's fine. Thanks, fine. Thank you very much.
The water
um,
volume is also such, again, the tides and the water volume turnover is so high that it's highly unlikely. I like to say anything's possible, but the data that we have from Stacy's Brook, and we see that there's a direct correlation between that source and the pollution
So
handling.
you're not monitoring the input from the larger system. I understand. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your answer. That's very clear.
okay, I'm going to return to the chat. Steve, if you do have a source that you would like to share with the Conservancy, you can feel free to email us at swampscottconservancy@gmail.com,
Thank
and
you so
we'll
much.
do our
Yeah.
best to get an answer for you. Our next question in the chat comes from Martha Dansdill, and she asks, until the contamination can be addressed at the sources, can the water be treated before it exits? And then possibly ultraviolet light, chemicals, question mark.
So
Senator,
I mean,
do you want to take that one?
yeah, I think I mentioned in my brief presentation that certainly we want to keep an open mind about the water side of things as much as we look at Swampscott DPW infrastructure as well as Lynn Water and Sewer Commission infrastructure. So we're trying to see what's been done elsewhere. We're running it up flagpoles to the state environmental authorities as well as the federal folks, and still kind of we've gotten kind of mixed signals here and there as to what can be done, what can't be done to treat. Some of it's super expensive too, and I think overall, I think one thing I would like folks to agree with me on, but I think we can all agree that we should not just in general be pumping out this fecal matter and the sewage into the system regardless. So I think we all can agree we need to fix the infrastructure. If in the short term, to make the beach swimmable, there are other alternatives that make sense to put funding towards or efforts towards, resources towards, we want to identify those and make sure that it cannot harm the wildlife, the marine ecology, among other things. Like, we don't want to create a bigger problem or a separate problem while trying to find a solution. So hopefully soon, maybe when we circle back as a group in the future, we can give updates as to what's been kind of taken off the table and what other things we're still looking at. And if please, for the panelists too, if I'm off base on any of that, if people disagree, like, I am not a scientist, as was pointed out earlier. So I'm happy to listen to other folks' opinions as well.
Thank you, Senator. I'm going to go to one more in the chat, and then David, I'll come to you. I see you with your hand up. This one comes from Victoria, and she asks, is there a plan for a citywide information campaign for Lynn? By the time people get to the beach on a hot day with their kids, they're determined to get in the water. I live 0.3 miles from Kings Beach and walk there most days and see people disregarding the red flags. Do we know if there's an updated communication plan?
I'm not sure on the city side, and please, if any city councilors are on, or so ahead, Mike, go ahead.
No, yeah. So so that gets back to some of what we may want to look at doing in the future, because of the alphabet soup of agencies that are involved, and as well as the red flags went up with no description of what they meant, or there's all types of things to be addressed. But that is one of the things that we're hoping to work on with others in this group moving forward, to improve the communication just on a regular basis for what the quality of the water is.
this is a role that we really see Friends of Lynn and Nahant and Save the Harbor, Save the Bay being a big, taking a big role in as kind of nonprofit advocates for the cause because of, again, as Michael said, all the different folks. It's DCR property, so they would have to actually post the signs, but it's affecting people in Lynn. So we work closely. A lot of it comes down to what can we get put on the DCR property in terms of like clear communication, and they're receptive to recommendations, but there's a lot of administration and red tape to get through to decide should it say and where should it say it and in what languages.
Chris, I was one of the things that you suggested of having some volunteers down on the beach, to explain what's going on with the water quality, particularly if these people can speak languages other than English. I think it's a great idea, and I think would help answer Victoria's question as well.
Excellent, thank you. David, you are welcome to unmute and ask your question.
Hi. Now I want to comment on a couple of things. I wear a number of hats, and I got pulled into this from a Facebook post. Lifelong resident, full disclosure, lifelong resident of Lynn. Grew up and live a block up from Kings Beach for 50 years. I'm a teacher at Lynn Classical High School. Hey, Brendan.
Go Rams.
And is your assistant here today?
Sean should be in here somewhere. So yeah.
Yeah, Sean. I remember Sean. I'm proud of him. I also had a former career at the New England Aquarium as an aquarist and have all kinds of water quality background. And one of my colleagues from Northeastern is here. So I have a big background, and I don't want to get into that. But two things. I watched your meeting. You guys had a meeting you posted online just because I wanted some background, and I wrote some notes. And two of the things I wrote came up. One was the treatment, the ozone or chemical bleach treatment. I worry about that a lot for two reasons. I've worked with closed systems. Biggest one, 200,000 gallons, the giant ocean tank at the aquarium in Boston. And it takes, Brendan, you mentioned cost and volume, and the volumes we're talking about just at our little beach, and it is a little beach in the realm of the world, it would be a waste of money. And I remember hearing about this in the mayoral election about how it would make the beach swimmable. The goal is to fix the problem, not make the beach just swimmable. And we got this money to fix the problem. And I feel like if we go down the road of ozone and bleach and chemical treatment, it's going to waste funds that could go to data that's pointing at the broken pipes. Is really like can we just fix the broken pipes? Not, I'm a scientist, and for me to say the solution might be that simple, it might be. So I just wanted to put that out there, that I hope for optics that we don't go down the road of chemical and ozone treatment, because it would be a bad idea. And I just got into this with you guys following when online, and now I'm very interested. As far, and then the second thing, I don't want to hog the show here, about education. If you want a good model, you guys made me think of when I was at the aquarium, Revere Beach had piping plovers all of a sudden breeding on it. And the Audubon Society was worried about the baby birds. The piping plover is an endangered bird. So one of the problems is dogs. The little baby birds can't go to the water to feed with their parents. And so we, the aquarium and the Audubon, we got volunteers and staff to go to Revere Beach and basically pick times to educate the public and say, hey, one, your dog's not supposed to be off the leash, and two, here's why. And once the people saw the little baby birds and understood why their dog was a problem and why you shouldn't sit here, and the dunes were roped off. If any of you have been to Revere Beach, you have probably seen the roped off dunes. That's where the breeding happens. The eggs are laid. The babies and the parents live there. They run back and forth to the water to feed on little amphipods and such. So I think, and with all the organizations, I'm familiar with many of the organizations that are in this room and have been part of this whole process, that we could probably help with signage, yes, and different languages, but a presence of people who know enough to make people be like, oh, that's why I shouldn't go in the water. And what can I do to help? Whether that's money or time, or maybe they'll tell people, So I'm a big education and science person, and I'm willing to offer my, as a Lynn resident, I'm speaking for David Winchester. I'm not speaking for any of the organizations that I spoke for. I just wanted to give you a background of where I'm coming from with the water quality issues and the education issues. So that was it. And I'm happy to be aboard, and I'll be contacting some of you definitely. So friends of Lynn, Nahant Beach, I've been involved with you guys. Save the Harbor, Save the Bay. 25 years ago, I couldn't go scuba diving in Boston Harbor because my job wouldn't let me because I would get sick. And now there's dolphins and whales feeding in Boston Harbor. So there is hope, people. I'm happy to do whatever I can. So
Excellent.
I'll shut up now.
Thank you, David. If you want to private chat me your contact information, I'll make sure to get it to the panelists as well.
I will.
Excellent. We do have a couple more questions in the chat. I think some of these will be relatively quick. Coco has asked if it is possible to get a copy of the slides from the speakers tonight. And so if that is possible, I can send that out in a follow-up email. It looks like we had some head shakes yes there. Martha has asked, is the discharge being tested for COVID? So Michael is shaking his head no, so it does not look like the discharge is being tested for COVID.
I don't know if we want to get into this detail, but I mean, they are, the MWRA was testing the outfall for like traces of COVID to kind of, it was some of the best predictors of how the surges were going to go. But it's not contagious or active COVID. It's portions of the mRNA that indicates whether it was present. So the short answer is there's not a concern of contracting COVID from the sewage. There's worse stuff though, or equally as bad stuff.
Excellent. We do have a question. Is Salem Sound Coast Watch a collaborator? And the Conservancy is often in touch with Salem Sound Coast Watch, as I imagine the other nonprofits on this call are as well. So I'm going to give that one a yes. And I also dropped in the chat, they are hosting a great water event this Thursday up at the Cabot in Beverly. So if you would like to check that out, please do. Leslie asks, what's the best we can hope for, and when will we hope to get there?
A perfectly clean beach next week, right, Senator?
That's a better answer than I had. No, I mean, I think the best thing that's happened so far is everyone coming together from both communities and further even outside of this. And, we've heard from, scientists hopping in tonight and, community, I mean, all walks of life are rallying behind this the stars seem to be aligned. So, no timeline until we have a better sense of the specific actions that need to happen right away. But I would say that we will be communicating every step of the way so that everyone's informed and we can tailor our advocacy together in the best possible way with the most up-to-date information. Really bad answer, a political answer to your very honest and nice question, Leslie, but I'm a politician. What can I say?
Excellent. Thank you, Senator. We do have one additional question from Lisa asking, how much do boats contribute to pollution? I'm not sure if anybody is equipped to answer that question.
I don't have like an actual answer. I don't know how much, but you know, I would just reframe it and just come back to the idea that we know where a lot of the pollution comes from. So, you know, like with Steve's question, it's like if we can focus on the thing we know is a big problem, you know, we take this one step at a time. I mean, there's lots of stuff that boaters can do to just be good citizens and you know, use oil pads and you know not pump their you know holding tanks overboard, you know things like that. But you know, similar stuff that we do on land, right? Don't throw your trash in the ground. Pick up after your dog. Um, that if we focus, you know, like we are on the main issue, once that's taken care of, it'll reveal what, if any, other issues there are. And you know, those will be after this effort. Those will feel like a walk in the park, a swim on the beach. I don't know. What do you say for swimming?
Colleen, I saw Bonnie Carr had her hand up, I think.
A physical hand. Sorry. When you raise your virtual hand, you get pushed to the top of the list and it alerts me a little bit better. I apologize, Bonnie, for not seeing you waving at me if you've been doing that for a while. Go ahead, Bonnie.
So much for having the meeting tonight. And I just wanted to thank Senator Creighton, especially when he said that he recently had a conversation with the Secretary of Environmental Affairs and that we have buy-in from the Secretary now regarding this issue. And my next question, which I think Michael answered, was how long will it take? I mean, we can't really have a definite timeline, but one of the dates that flew out was around the 2030s and the 2030s, sorry. That seems like an awful long time from 2022 to have to wait. I live close to the beach. I see so many kids down there and their families, and it's a hot day. It's, you know, 80 degrees, 100 degrees, and we all run to that beach. And, you know, the fact of the matter is, if we've all seen it, people are going in the water anyway. And to wait another 8 years, is there anything that we can do as a community, as members, that we could have that timeline move a little bit closer than maybe the anticipated one that is out there right now?
So I may have Chris chime in on this as well. But you know, there's resource limitations in every community, and leadership at communities make decisions about you know what gets at the front of the line, and so you know that's decisions that are made. So I would say for the Lynn piece that it's probably early 2030s. And you know, I'm not sure how much before that Swampscott side will be. It's complicated work, again, and it's just a competition for other resources. Chris, do you want to add something?
Just that it's all underground, right? It's like you got to get to it. You can't, you know, we can't just the environment, the group that's been contracted by the Lynn Water and Sewer Commission was talking about using dog teams actually that can like sniff this out and like that's like exciting kind of new technology. I don't know how well it works to be able to find things faster. You know, there's ways you blow smoke up the pipe, you know, but the work involves you test the pipe at this spot, and if it's dirty, you go up to the next spot, and you test it there, and if it's dirty, you go up to the next spot until you get a clean sample. Then you go, okay, well, then the dirty spot was just back there. So what was there that was causing the pollution? And you got to do that if you look at the full size of the city of Lynn and the town of Swampscott. It's a lot of area underground. So you know we have to have a little patience and just stick with it, as with anything worth doing.
As far as Swampscott goes, I think Chris mentioned something that I had missed, which is that there's a fairly recent presentation on the select board website, and Swampscott definitely has a timeline, and it's a multi-phase job, and you can see how complicated it is. So, you know, I suppose if Senator Crighton was able to do some magic with federal funds and everybody got together and threw a lot of money into the project, it could go faster. But the timeline I think that Swampscott's working with is what is affordable with the resources that they have. But it's there.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jim. Before we come back, I see Steve has his hand up again. I want to, we do have one more question in the chat from someone whose voice we haven't heard from yet today. John asked, do we have an estimate for how much a full cleanup of the pipe system would cost? And I'm not sure if that's the Swampscott side, the Lynn side, or both.
I'm just going to throw out, irresponsibly throw out like a totally wide ballpark number, which is like, and anyone can fight me and argue and push, say I'm wrong on this, but like, 15 to 30 million is like a nice little, just to give people a sense, of like how much, and that may not be accurate, but we've seen versions of numbers over the years, for how much, again, you got to go underground, you got to fix a lot of pipes.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, we are at about 8:22. I believe 8:30 was kind of the tail end of what we were aiming for today. Steve, I'm going to go ahead and say, please feel free to unmute and ask your either next question or follow-up question. And then we do have one more from Sherry in the chat at the end.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, I just wanted to get a second chance. I haven't been I haven't been in the environmental world in a little while, but I did work at the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia for a few years in their division of environmental research. It was the aquatic. We were more river-based, but I'd like to come across a little more as a scientist than a raving lunatic this time, if that's possible. I did have a chance to quickly throw together a source, if that was important to the scientists in the group. And the person who told me this question that they've carried for a few years was really talking about shifts in ocean currents that they've read about and heard about. And this is why they were so concerned about the huge outflow from Deer Island. It's not just two smaller town, a small town and a city in Massachusetts, but for all of Boston. And even though we're all very cheered about the great outcomes from Deer Island, and God knows I've watched since the beginning of that story and applauded from from everywhere I've lived. If indeed the currents are shifting more northerly than southerly, as this person spoke to me about, then I think we have a real problem that is kind of beyond maybe our ability to do much about. But if this is if it's a major input of fecal matter, etc., into our system, then isn't it possible that everything you're proposing might be a failed attempt? Even though you can measure it, you've got it. I know you're measuring it. But let's say we fix and plug all those holes. And if the problem's still there, maybe it's coming from somewhere else, like Boston Harbor. Okay, I hope I posed the question as a question as opposed to a raving lunatic.
No,
and I'll take politicians' answers to this one.
Well,
thank you.
I'll just on behalf of the panel,
I left this question on Laura Ehrlich's, and I never got a reply. So, yeah, since you're right on camera, I'd love to hear your comment on this.
So, yeah, I mean, just thank
Mr.
you.
Crighton.
You did not come across as raving lunatic at all, and I appreciate your passion on the issue. And I again, what Chris had said earlier, I'm not going to say, anything is possible, certainly, but I think when you just look at the data that both Mike, Jim, and Chris went through, you can just see the heavy concentrations right at the outfall there, which consistently over time, not just snapshot year, has shown that concentration is there. And as you move further away from the source, those numbers go down. So certainly there could be other sources of contamination or fecal matter and other things out there, and that would be touching any of the existing bodies of water and beaches as well, which test much better. So I think at least in proximity to what we're talking about now, I think we can say with a great deal of surety that certainty that the outfall is the major source. And if we tackle that, we're likely to have reduced, hopefully under that 104. But, if not, we would have to look to the next best thing. But this is, I think, has to be the top priority.
Yeah.
Doing this.
Thanks, Senator, and thanks, Steve, for reframing the question. I love finding out new information. I'm aware of the shift in ocean currents as a result of climate change, and it does have impacts on things. And I'm going to give a look into this. I have never seen the information or the data that shows the contamination from the Mass Bay outfall pipe. I mean, there's a monitoring committee that keeps a close eye on this. I think the reason we're called Save the Harbor, Save the Bay, starting back in the 80s, was because when we started out saying, well, it's save the harbor, but we're putting a pipe out into the bay, the rest of Cape Cod and everything's like, oh, so you're going to clean up your dirty harbor and stick it out with us. And it's like, well, no, we're not. Actually, we're going to be really careful about that. And all of the work that went into that was to make sure it wasn't going to sacrifice any other resources. So I haven't seen that data that shows the outfall is a source of contamination. And if it exists, I'd love to find it.
I think what this person that lives on the South Shore, and what her concern is that they're not getting the outflow anymore from Deer Island, and that it is going north. And I'm not gonna we can't I'm not gonna argue it. I'm just saying, somebody who I believe has a reasonable right to an opinion on this matter is concerned about shifting ocean currents. And if you think about the output for the entire city of Boston, if more of it's going north than going south, it could be a problem that is beyond a political problem. And I know we want to fix it through political systems. I get that. I spent a little time in DC for the Office of Technology Assessment as well. You want to solve problems. You want to do solvable problems. And I think you're doing the right thing. I'm just asking, could somebody take a look at this as a possibility?
Steve, I did share a resource with you in the private chat that you sent me that I think will actually help answer part of this question. So I will momentarily put on my scientist hat. So in addition to moderating and playing this role here for the Swampscott
Fantastic.
I'm also a professor of conservation biology at Brandeis University. And so I recommend reaching out and looking at some of the resources available through the Stone Living Lab. The Stone Living Lab is a new enterprise through UMass Boston, and they actually, I believe, are collaborating with some physicists and oceanographers who will be able to look at this scale of question to a better degree than we can here in terms of the local micro environmental issue. But very much appreciate the contribution, and I'm a super fan of the Stroud Water Center, UPenn alum, so love the Academy as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I love Brandeis as a parent of Brandeis, so thank you. Yeah.
We do have one more question quickly in the chat, and then I see Moral Lau, and then Moral, you will round us out. Let me ask first the question in the chat. So Sherry asks, what is DCR's responsibility in regards to this issue?
Mainly the testing and the communication. DCR is not actually responsible for the pollution. They manage the beach. And so you could put it one way, that DCR is actually the victim, or is like they're getting their beach that they manage is getting the impact of all of the municipalities, the non-point source and the stormwater and the sewers. So, but they are, do have purview over the messaging, over the flagging on the state beaches, and over the communication of the signs, which is again the short-term priority, like to communicate this clearly to Bonnie's point and others. Sorry, I forget who said it.
That was
Martha,
from Sherry in the chat. Sorry, I lost that for a moment too. Excellent. Lucky DCR. They get to deal with the problem and then communicate it to the public. That really sounds like a win from their perspective. Maura, would you like to round us out this evening? Thanks for joining us.
Sure, Colleen. Thank you so much. This is great. This is fantastic information. So we really do appreciate it. So real quick, it's really not necessarily a science question, but it's maybe more a Senator Crighton question. So, I really have to say, since it's almost 20 years since we've lived in Swampscott, that we really we as Swampscott missed the boat on participating with DCR in terms of at least monitoring Kings Beach, or, swinging Kings Beach into the DCR world. Revere certainly saw the benefits of that. Certainly Lynn did. Nahant has. I grew up in Everett, so, and I lived in Revere for 10 years. So I just wonder, is there ever an opportunity to sort of squeak the wheel for Swampscott to ever get back into DCR, Senator Crighton, and maybe what that would entail? Because it seems like we are sort of, we still look the same as we did at the beginning of the 20th century. When you look back at the old pictures, and, Lynn has moved on, Revere has moved on, and Nahant has moved on. But we're sort of stuck in a time warp. And I think it's unfortunate. I think it's visually, our Kings Beach looks poor, and it's unsafe. There's pieces of it falling apart. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mara, for your question. Yeah, it's pretty apparent, the separation there. I live not far from Lynn Shore Drive, and our family is up and down all the time, and it is kind of unusual just to have that hard stop right at the border there. I would say I'm happy to support the will of the town of Swampscott, as someone that represents you. I've heard in passing from folks that have said, can we look into this? I think it would need a concerted effort by folks in the town. I don't know what the formal process, to be honest, would be. It's kind of a unique situation, not one that I've seen in 17 years in the legislature. But should this be something that the town, your local officials would like to pursue, we can certainly have conversations. I would say, candidly, that DCR's budgetary woes have been pretty well documented to this point. There have been a number of studies in, their ability to handle their existing infrastructure and properties. I've constantly, and I love the workers at DCR, and I'm not here to, we work very well with the organization as a whole, but, on a regular basis, fighting to preserve and maintain our existing assets. So I imagine there would be some reluctance on their side to, assume something without, significantly increased revenues. But I'm happy to support. Short answer is happy to support anything that the town of Swampscott and its people want to do. So consider me a champion on that, in that regard.
Thank you.
And Chris Mancini and I both are Swampscott residents, so it's certainly something we could check with our town administrator on and get the latest information from him. And I'll be happy to do that. I know people have asked that question in the past, and I can't remember what the answer is.
I've asked it quite a few times, Jim, and I've never gotten an answer. So I kind of keep squeaking the wheel. Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. And you do an excellent job at that, Maura, too, as someone who has been in quite a few meetings with you over the years.
Well, yes. Back at squeaking,
impressed.
Colleen.
Okay, that brings us to the close, I think, of our activities this evening. So once again, I want to give a very warm and gracious thank you to our four panelists, Chris, Brendan, Michael, and Jim, for joining us this evening and sharing their knowledge of Kings Beach. I believe I got all of the questions/comments in the chat. There were a few private chats too, so my chat box is a little denser than yours. I apologize if I did miss your question, if it was in there. Thank you again for joining the Swampscott Conservancy. Don't forget to donate to Michael for the Shamrock plunge. Wait, I've already mutated
Splash.
the Shamrock Splash, because I feel like Chris put in way too many plugs for his own drive there. And then you can always join us at the Swampscott Conservancy. We'll continue to have these conversations as well. But thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. This recording will be posted to the Swampscott Conservancy YouTube page. And I did drop that link sometime during this presentation into the chat, but I'll try to push that out in the follow-up email as well through the Zoom registration. And I'm going to hang on for just a second because I do need to grab some of the names of people who wanted to be added to our email list. But everybody else is free to go and enjoy the rest of their evening tonight. And thank
you. And stay safe, everyone.